Hello and welcome to Wessex Ways Podcast. Today it's myself, Paul, and
Kate. Hello.
We're Headleyless.
We are.
Is that
Is that
verb,
like headless?
Yeah, it is a little bit, isn't it?
It sounds a little bit sinister, to be honest.
It does sound
with
really
you,
sinister.
but
We've done something bad with our
We-
co-presenter.
We
Headley.
haven't. He's just at work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've got a very different episode today to bring you all. Quite an exciting one,
yes.
very different. I'm going to basically just hand over to Kate to tell us what is happening today on Wessex Ways.
Okay, so for those of you who've been listening to Wessex Ways for, well, at least a whole 3 podcasts, when I very first started working on the podcast with Paul and with Headley, one of the first things that I said was, I know nothing about Wessex, except that one of my favourite musicians wrote a song about Wessex. And when I got this opportunity, I thought, what if, under 1,000,000 to 1 chance, we would have the opportunity to interview that musician, Frank Turner, on our podcast? And it happened.
And he said, yeah. He said, yeah, all right.
Yeah,
How
he
cool is
said,
that?
yeah. And so back in August, so a couple of months ago now, but that's the way that our editing schedule works, Paul and I sat down digitally with Frank and did a half-hour interview about his background from Wessex, his love of history, and a whole lot of other stuff as well. So here you go, guys. Please enjoy one of the coolest interviews I've ever done in my life. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very, very special episode of Wessex Ways. Now, as you might be able to see, there's just me today. There's no Headley, no Paul. But instead, we have got an exceptionally special guest. Somebody for whom, to me, the phrase musician doesn't quite give it enough. We're talking #1 albums, sold out arena tours, and most recently, your 3,000th show. And most incitingly for us, he's from Hampshire. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Frank Turner. Frank, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, and what a lovely introduction. Thank you.
I definitely didn't practice it 20 times when I was driving home earlier. That hasn't happened at all.
Consider me flattered.
I appreciate it. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, including yourself, Frank, we have this our little podcast where we talk about a lot about history. We talk about folklore. We talk about culture. We talk about the landscape. We talk about Wessex in general, I suppose. And you are somebody from that part of the world.
Originally, yes. Well,
Okay.
I mean, in fact, I was actually born in the Middle East, but I was there for like 6 months, so I don't remember that. And my parents moved back from there to the South Downs, shall we say. So I was raised in the Meon Valley between Winchester and Petersfield. A little village called Meonstoke was where my parents lived when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And they lived there. Well, they lived there until I was in my mid-20s. I moved to London when I was 18, but went back. I then lived in Winchester itself for a while after that. And these days I live in London still, but my mum is still in East Meon. Down.
Beautiful part of the world, absolutely gorgeous.
Yes.
And how
those
did
are my Hampshire bona fides.
Yeah, that's it. We've established, which the irony of this is you've got the one of us from our podcast that's actually from Yorkshire and has nothing to do with that part of the world at all. But we what I was wondering is, obviously growing up I would imagine sort of quite rurally and in an area with a lot of history, how did that have an impact on your music as you were starting to develop as an artist?
Oh, well, at the start, very little other than a rejectionist sense, because I sort of came of age, as it were, entered my teens full of piss and vinegar and rage and disdain for my education and my parents' social world and all that kind of thing. So I was a very angry kid, and I was listening to the Sex Pistols and the Clash and then Black Flag and all that kind of thing, and very keen to get to London. And I'm not sure, I didn't dislike the countryside or whatever, but I remember being a little disdainful of my friends from Winchester who had dreams of moving to the big city, by which they meant Southampton, and I was like,
your dreams was slightly bigger than that.
Yeah, so I always sort of slightly had one foot out of the door as a kid, and my dad's family's from North London, and I live in North London now, and that's a big part of my identity, should we say.
Yeah.
Having said all of that, there was a period of life in my kind of middle 20s where the last punk band I was in, Million Dead, had come to an end, and it was my parents' marriage had also broken up, and there was sort of a period of collapse and sort of difficulty in lots of areas of my life. And so I ended up back in Winchester and had a bit of a sort of moment of reconnection around then. And these days, I mean, like when I go and visit my mum, which is not often enough, there is a thing that I can do where I walk through the South Downs in particular, and it sort of puts its finger on a certain corner of my heart that nothing else quite does. There is there are similar landscapes all over the world, but there are peculiarities to it that are extremely meaningful to me. And then musically speaking, when I started out as a solo artist back in 2005, I was interested in folk music kind of more conceptually than practically, should we say, to a degree. But I was also interested in stuff like Springsteen, or in Tom Petty and people like that, who've made careers of writing about where they're from, with a mixture of love and disdain and hope and disappointment and all those kinds of things. I mean, Springsteen's the great bard of New Jersey, and more than half the songs about New Jersey are about hating it and wanting to get away from it. It's been a rich seam of inspiration. The other one would be John K. Sampson, who's one of my favorite songwriters, who's from Winnipeg, Canada, and he writes about Winnipeg endlessly. So I was sort of inspired to explore that. Do you know what I mean? And to sort of see what it would be like to use those kind of templates of creativity applied to my own life. I mean, that's the thing, you listen to Springsteen, and I was inspired not to write songs about New Jersey because I don't know New Jersey all that well, but to write songs about where I'm from. And there are sort of effectively two answers to that, which would be London and Hampshire, and I sadly spent my younger years in Hampshire, so I kind of started kind of digging around in that, and it has led to a pretty fruitful vein of songwriting.
Oh, without a doubt. I think England Keep My Bones is probably still one of my favourite albums of yours, even though it's 15 years ago now. And you can certainly certainly see the influence of both the folklore and the environment within that album. But obviously, Wessex boy, we're talking here about Wessex Ways today, and that I remember hearing you once at a gig saying that it doesn't matter where you're from, that song pinches into the heart of being where you are from at any given time.
I mean, again, in a similar way to the Springsteen model I was talking about, obviously Wessex Boy is about Winchester specifically, and there's lines about the Buttercross and about the Railway Inn and the benches by the Guildhall, and little kind of local colour and all that kind of thing. But I've sung that song to sold out crowds, singing every word, in Portland, Oregon, and in Munich, and in Australia, and all the rest of it. So I think the most
obscure place I heard it was in a student bar in Adelaide, Australia, in 20.
Well, there we go. Right, okay, there we go. And it's thick, and it's like, hopefully, I mean, without wanting to sound too kind of obvious about this, I mean, the knack of good songwriting in a way is to simultaneously make something feel specific and universal, and it's a neat trick if you can pull it off. Absolutely.
So I know that you are somebody who actually, not only when music's not so much of a big part of your life, I know that history is a big part of your life as well, isn't it, Frank? I know that you're very much into history. Is the history of Wessex something that interests you?
It is. I mean, we should, of course, and I'm sure you've done this, sort of, there's a long debate about what exactly Wessex is and when it exists. And
our podcast but one, that was literally the title of it. What is Wessex?
Right. What is Wessex? Yeah. I mean, I hope I'm self-aware enough to recognise that sort of banging on about Wessex in the 21st century is a little bit kind of arch, should we say? Do you know what I mean? I mean, it hasn't been a kingdom.
I'm not sure that it is in our very niche little corner of the internet, if I'm
well, okay, that's a relief to hear. But I mean, my mum's family's from kind of Somerset and Devon and stuff like that. So, which is still, I believe, or certainly Somerset is Wessex, right? I think so.
Yes, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I'm pretty
someone
sure.
somewhere in a comment somewhere that will correct us.
I'm relying on your greater expertise for that comment. But I'm not Northern. I'm not East Anglian. I'm not Welsh. I'm not from the Black Country or anything like that. I mean, it definitely feels like the place that I am from. But anyway, the history of it. Yeah, I mean, I'm broadly interested in English and indeed British history, and I've done read a fair amount of Anglo-Saxon history in my time, in which Wessex plays a featuring role. I've read Thomas Hardy, who of course is the other kind of person who's used the word Wessex in the last sort of 100 years.
It is just you and him, and to a much smaller extent.
Me and Thomas Hardy. So I'm interested in those things. I mean, but I'm also, broadly speaking, I'm interested in. Certainly, as I've got older, I've been more interested in folklore. I think folklore is really interesting to me because there's more than one way of coming at it as a topic, and I'm definitely. It would be ludicrous of me to describe myself as a historian because I'm obviously not. But I would say that I read folklore with the historian's eye, as in, there are lots of things that one reads about. I mean, Geoffrey of Monmouth's books, they're evidently not true, but they tell you quite a lot about the milieu in which they were written and the prevailing attitudes and those kinds of things. So I don't think that there was two giants called Gog and Magog and all that kind of thing, but I think that you can draw interesting inferences from them, and I think they tell you a lot. Particularly oral traditions tell you a lot about the societies that they come from. So I am interested in that. There's one specific instance which I'm sure you're leading up to, of me employing some Wessex folklore in a song. I wrote a song called English Curse that's on England Keep My Bones, which is I'm actually from East Hampshire, so the New Forest is the other end of the county for me. But one of my best friends is from Ringwood, so I know the area a bit. And there's a plaque somewhere about the death of William II in the New Forest. And at some point at school, I did this sort of Lord Tyrrell shooting him with an arrow, and it was a hunting accident, or was it because Henry I shows up in London exceedingly quickly? Afterwards, and it's all a little bit neat from his point of view. But the folkloric aspect of it is the kind of local myth of the blacksmith who places a curse on King William I, the Conqueror, for stealing his land. And again, it's unlikely that this is true, and I don't believe in curses, but at the same time, it tells you something about kind of land displacement and the kind of social change that was brought in post the conquest with the Norman domination of society, and the claiming of common land as king's land in the 1080s and all that kind of thing. So it tells you a lot of interesting things, but also putting all of that sort of intellectual stuff aside, I enjoy the fact that I think that there are certain strands of English history specifically which are quite sort of rebellious and anti-authoritarian in a way, that have often been kind of subsumed and lost because, particularly once you get into the realm of the empire and relations with the island and that kind of thing, the English/British are, generally speaking, the bad guys and the people at the top of the pile and all that kind of thing, and rightly so, and all the rest. But I've always been attracted to those kind of folklore. Kind of represents those kind of like whispering echoes of kind of people who don't necessarily get written about in history books. Robin Hood's a great example of that. It's a story that has a lot to say about relations with the church and with the state and all that kind of thing. And there has always been a slightly cantankerous part of the character, which I quite like. And that story seemed like a cool version of that, because from one angle it's just straight up anti-authoritarianism. It's like, if the state takes my land, then I'll curse them. And I like that. That was part of the appeal for me.
I think definitely when you say about Anglo-Saxon history, you've done well to read an awful lot of it, because there isn't very much of it whatsoever written down.
Well, it's important to say that I'm definitely, when I say I'm not a historian, I don't read primary sources. Let's say that. I like
I'm with you. Primary sources stay being research for things, and the rest of it is just for pure enjoyment, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, but I'm going to bring you kicking and screaming back into the 21st century. And I understand that you recently did a gig in the village hall at East Meon. How did that come about?
Well, in fact, it wasn't even it wasn't in the hall. It was in the Dell, which is a sort of farm campsite thing. That was so. There's a story here. I mean, so 10 years ago, I did a gig in a very nearby in East Mayham for my mum, and the sort of the slightly, well, one might say folkloric. I was going to say apocryphal, but let's use the word folklore. Back into it as I got the backs of my hands tattooed. My mum was furious, and she insisted that I come and do a gig for. My mum's a very sort of community oriented person and does a lot of kind of, she's a governor at the school, and she runs open choir night at the pub and all that sort of thing. So we did that one. That was in 2015. This time around, my mum is a religious person and is involved in the church in East Meehan, and the church is in a state of disrepair, and they were looking at fundraising angles, and my mum twisted my arm a little bit. I actually told her on the night on stage that it was a down payment for when I get my neck tattooed, and she was
superb, brilliant.
But yeah, so we went down, and the people who run the Dell organised the kind of logistics of it, and we had 1,500 people in, which was nice. And I like to think everyone had a lovely time, and we raised 50 grand. It's funny as well, simply because I'm not a religious person myself, but I think there's a certain sort of type of person who'll go on the internet and be like, "Oh, it's hypocritical" or whatever, and it's like, oh, whatever. Not least because I think that it's entirely possible to not believe in God, but also appreciate the influence of Christianity on Western culture, but church architecture and that kind of thing. And the church in East Meehan is 1,000 years old. That's amazing. And I would be embarrassed to die and know that mine was the generation that let a 1,000-year-old building fall down. Do you know what I mean? It's like everyone else did the work, and when we dropped the ball, that's terrible. So and it's important to my mum. So I was happy to contribute.
That's such a cool thing to do, and I'm glad that you raised so much money. That's absolutely superb. I take it they can get a new roof now.
I believe so. I jokingly asked if they were going to put a plaque up to me in the church, and my mum said no, and I was a little bit
disappointed. And what about other venues that you've played sort of in that area? Where for you constitutes sort of as you say, I know you have two hometowns, but where constitutes a hometown?
Well, there are two very obvious ones. I grew up. I sort of discovered live music at the Joiners Arms in Southampton. My mum wouldn't let me go and see live music, partly because I was into like Cannibal Corpse and stuff, and she was just like, absolutely not. But I think my mum had no experience that world and was very worried about it, and I was quite young when I got into it all. But my mum's mate's son was in a band called Snug, who were a kind of pop punk Nirvana-y kind of band, and they were playing the Joiners, and this was in 1995, I think. And because it was my mum's friend's kid who was fronting the band, my mum decided that it couldn't be all just bikers injecting each other with heroin in the dark. And so she allowed me to go. Funnily enough, I know everyone at the Joiners very well now, and I was way too young to be there. I was quite tall for my age when I was 13, but they let me in, and I had the time of my life. So the Joiners Arms, and I mean, I was there. I played a show there in July. Like, it's an extremely important place to me. The other one's the Railway Inn in Winchester, which was closer to home for me, but which I discovered afterwards. But again, I spent many years going to the Railway whenever I could, and there was a lot of kind of metal and sort of in brackets new metal going on at the time. There wasn't very much punk rock, but so new metal had to do in a tight spot, should we say? But there was. I
remember the drought of the early 2000s very well. Yes.
Yeah, but it was cool. There was a lot of cool stuff going on, and the other thing with the Railway, which is amazing, which still goes on, is the Railway. Monday night open mic is amazing, and I used to, in the period of time when I was living back in Winchester, I used to go down there pretty often and try out new songs, and just sort of join in with the communitarian aspect of it. So those two spots are very they loom large in my backstory.
Amazing, thank you so much. And I guess my last question is, what's next? What's coming up? What have you?
I am headlining Beautiful Days on Friday, which is I think probably not in Wessex. It's nearly in Wessex. It's in Devon.
Devon,
It's
isn't
kind of
it?
Devon. It's on the Devon-Cornwall borders, so I think some people might argue the toss on that one. A couple more festivals, going to the States for a while. Got Lost Evenings in Edinburgh, touring Europe in the autumn. I nearly said fall, and then I've got lots of touring plans for next year. Some of which will include Wessex.
Hopefully we'll see you down in Wessex. I mean, I don't know why I would see you down in Wessex. I live north of London and I'm from Yorkshire, but occasionally I have to venture down there to do this. So, yeah, and I just also, the very last thing, more of a personal thing, I just want to congratulate you on your 3,000 shows. It's absolutely crazy. The Ali Pali was an exceptional night. It was absolutely brilliant.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I was there with a friend. We were on one of the accessibility stands, and it was just absolutely brilliant. And what a remarkable achievement. How many people was it? You said it's believed there was you.
I sort of brushed up on that for the night. Bon Jovi's got more apparently.
Really?
And yeah, Bon Jovi's on like 3,000 something. I've beat Metallica.
Well done.
Beating them. I mean, it's difficult to say because ultimately, once you get into the old blues players like B.B. King, B.B. King played like 3 shows a day for 360 days a year for like 60 years. I mean, there's just no way anyone's going to top that.
Yeah.
So it gets. I have looked into all of this, but and then John Otway, of course, has 5,000 to his name now.
Also,
John Otway's got like 30 years on me as well, so I've got time.
And that's the thing I was just going to say. It's a remarkable feat to do at this point in your career, and congratulations. You definitely are the hardest working man in folk, which is a very, very specific little niche. But we love a specific little niche around here.
Well, I mean, I've got vague ideas for show 4,000, but it's not going to be for another kind of 8 years or something. So.
Well, Frank, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And come and join us again anytime that you want to chat history about Wessex, because it's what we do. So enjoy.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Take care.